Karen Reed was framed. Her car never struck John O'Keefe. She did not cause his death. And that means that somebody else did.
In this video, we're going to talk about the framing theory to answer the question, was Karen Reed framed? If you're interested, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome. In my opinion, the framing started at 12:31 a.m., and I'll explain all that in a bit. But first, I want to explain what framing is. Goffman's framing theory is a theory, a Canadian sociologist who analyzed human behavior by observing people from all walks of life, how they interacted according to their ideas and values, beliefs. What was their individual reactions like? For example, he analyzed people in the shopping center, how they talked to each other, the person selling and the person buying. He analyzed people in the workplace. Were they loyal? And he discovered, depending on how something was framed, it could result in a typical reaction. By framing or setting up what you want people to see, they come to a conclusion that you predicted. However, they will use their own thought processes to get there. So they may not see reality because their decisions are based on how they see themselves and their own interests. Here's an example. So it might sound kind of difficult to understand, but we'll get there, and we're going to give a few examples in the Karen Reed case. But for now, let's play a little game to see how framing works in everyday life. Which package of meat would you rather buy? And don't say you don't eat meat. This is a game. Would you buy the one with 80% less fat, or would you buy the one with 20% fat? So let's see if you fit into the norm. The new neuromarketing found that people were more likely to buy 80% fat-free hamburgers, or beef mince as we say in the UK, than if the meat was presented with a contains 20% fat label. Why is this important to know? Well, our brain will gravitate to what we think is better for us. And what if the us means family or law enforcement, meaning the social gravitation is our decision is being made on what is best for us as a part of the group we are socially attached to. I also wondered if this framing theory could explain the terrible investigation in the Karen Reed case done by law enforcement. And interestingly, I found a study done in a police journal titled Framing in Criminal Investigation, how police officers reconstruct a crime. So this study was done in the Netherlands to see how investigation failures led to wrongful convictions. I think it's very interesting. And we're going to go through a couple of samples where there was framing by someone that would maybe have an interest in family loyalty. We're also going to look at how a couple of investigations could have, led to framing because of how the reports were taken. And then we're also going to look at how the prosecutor used framing. The simplest one to explain is the one you might have heard a lot about, and if you saw my video on it, was when the prosecutor presented evidence of the police Sally Port video where Karen Reed's SUV was brought in for inspection. Problem was, the video was shown to the jury inverted. This is a perfect example of framing. By showing a mirrored image, they were able to manipulate reality. The importance of inverting the video was so that the viewer did not think the officers were gathered around at the back of Karen Reed's SUV on the right-hand side, messing about with her taillight. As they presented the video in reversed, it would appear that they were gathered around the left side of the taillight. Now, this would, someone could say, would be so that the jury would not associate them, if I could say that word, messing about with the damaged taillight. Even if it was an honest technical mistake, it doesn't matter, as the thought process would have been established. They weren't associated with the right side taillight. And if the defense goes hard on the prosecutor, you could say the predictable reaction from the jury would be to see the defense as a bully. This is why I believe the judge should have stepped in and had the prosecutor correct the record. However, instead, 2 officers testified about the inverted video playing dumb, like it was not a big deal. They had not taken responsibility for the error, and they acted like, what's the big deal? That's the way the video was shown. That's the way it looked. But one officer said he never saw it that way. He saw it where the words were inverted. So, they just all played dumb, and it almost lost its effect. So that's the way you frame something, so that you end up having a whole nother discussion, and by the end of it, everybody's kind of forgotten where they are with it. So you might have noticed that in the back of my commentary, I had this photo of a guy with tattoos on his face, because you might remember in the trial, the defense attorney gave an example of what an inverted video would do to someone's, thought process. So he said, he gave the example of tattoos on an arm and said if a witness identified a criminal and said no, he had tattoos on his right arm, but because the video was inverted, it looked like the tattoos were on his left arm. So I put that up for you to decide, is that true? Obviously, you would think, where's the tattoos? Is it on the right side of his face, or is it on the left side of his face? Another form of framing I noticed is the way the Commonwealth of Massachusetts laid out the claim against Karen Reid. Prosecutor Lally filed a statement of case claim. So I will display on the screen what the statement of case claims, and we will compare the supporting testimony, which should match up. You can decide if the statement of case is deceitful in painting a picture that is not truthful. Keep in mind the statement of case should not be biased or overstate the facts. It represents what will be relied on. So the prosecutor writes here that Karina Kolokathis states the defendant along with John O'Keefe arrived approximately to the second bar at 11 p.m. and she observed the defendant drinking vodka soda cocktails while at the bar. However, did she say this when giving testimony? Let's find out.
As far as sort of the overall sort of demeanor within the bar that night, within the group that you were at the high top table with, how would you describe it?
Everybody was happy, having a good time.
No arguments amongst anybody at any time that you saw throughout the entire time you were there?
The whole time I was there was no issues at all.
Now, at some point later on in the evening, who, if anyone else, that you recognized or knew came into the bar?
So I believe I was actually about to leave, and that's when Karen and John came in.
And just to be clear, when you say Karen, you mean Karen Reid, is that correct?
That is correct.
And just to be clear, who we're talking about, do you see Karen Reid in the courtroom today?
I do.
And could you just identify as to where she's seated or how close
She's sitting right there.
That's a record reflect identification.
Okay.
Now, Mr. O'Keefe, John O'Keefe, how did you know him?
So John, his niece, and my younger daughter were friends.
We're friends, are friends?
They are friends.
And about how long had you known John O'Keefe?
John, we've probably known for 8 years or so.
And if you recall, when was it about that you had met the defendant, Ms. Reid?
I met Miss Reid at, I'm not sure exactly I think the first time I met her was at Jen McCabe's house.
And if you know about when was that in reference to this date of January 28, 2020?
I believe I met her sometime in 2020.
Sometime in 2020 at Ms. McCabe's.
That is correct.
And how would you describe sort of the nature of your relationship between either yourself and Mr. O'Keefe, or yourself and who did you know better, Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed?
I knew Mr. O'Keefe better. We saw him all the time. My daughter would have play dates with his niece. My husband coached basketball that his niece played on his team. So he was a great guy. We saw him all the time. Yeah.
And prior to this date of January 28th, had you ever been in any kind of social setting out with the defendant, Ms. Reed, before?
I had not been, no.
And do you recall approximately what time it was that they came in and you were about to leave?
I believe it was around 11 o'clock.
And at some point, did they, and by they I mean Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed, did they make their way over to where you were seated at the high top?
They did. So they walked in, and John did his rounds, said hi to everybody, came, gave me a hug, and they headed towards us, yes.
And when they came over to you, what, if anything, happened?
John was really happy. He started talking about Kaylee and how she had just gotten into Bishop Fan. And he was just very excited. You could tell he was super excited about that.
Now, as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, what, if anything, do you recall about what he was wearing?
I believe he was wearing a baseball hat, jeans, sneakers, some kind of top.
And what, if anything, do you recall about sort of a jacket or anything like that with him at any time that you saw him that night?
I don't remember a jacket. I remember like some kind of light shirt or something, like a light hoodie-ish kind of I don't remember a jacket.
As far as his clothing was concerned, what, if anything, do you recall about the condition of it? Were there any sort of tears or disheveled to?
He looked fine. Nothing about his clothing stood out to me.
Now, as far as what you observed as far as interactions between the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe that night, anything out of the ordinary that you observed while you were at the bar?
The defendant. Say that again?
As far as their interactions between Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant, anything out of the ordinary that you observed between the two of them that evening at the bar?
I saw nothing. I did not see anything.
And extending that sort of to the entire group at the high top table that you were with, anything that you observed sort of out of the realm of the demeanor that you've already described at any point in time?
No, everybody was having a great time.
Now, with regard to sort of where you were positioned at the high top table in regard to Mr. O'Keefe, was he closer to your end, or where was he located?
I'm not sure. I don't know where he ended up going. I know that Karen stayed with me, and then I'm not sure where John went, but I know he was talking to the guys, probably.
So Mr. O'Keefe was moving around a bit, talking to different people,
Yes,
and Ms. Reed was down towards where you were, is that correct?
that is correct.
And who, if anyone else, was sort of down your end of the table? Who were you talking to when Ms. Reed came up?
It was Jen McCabe,
So
the three of us.
when Ms. Reed comes and joins, it's essentially Ms. Reed, the defendant, yourself, and Ms. McCabe.
That is correct.
And when Ms. Reed first comes up, what, if any, conversation did she have with either yourself or Ms. McCabe?
She started talking to Jen first, and then they had a conversation, and then we started talking.
And that first sort of initial conversation between the defendant and Ms. McCabe, did you hear any of that conversation?
I did not. It was loud. I don't know what they were talking about.
Now, as far as, obviously you're at a bar and people are drinking, what, if anything, did you observe Mr. O'Keefe to be drinking that night?
I believe he was drinking beer.
And as far as Ms. Reed was concerned, what, if anything, did you observe her to be drinking that night?
She was drinking something out of a clear glass, perhaps.
So clear glass with a clear liquid in it?
Correct.
Now, as far as through any conversation that you had with either the defendant or Mr. O'Keefe, did you have any understanding of sort of where they came from prior to coming into the water bowl?
So they had come from across the street.
And what is across the street?
From the bar, I think, so it was C.F. McCarthy's.
And so as far as the conversation that you, at some point in time during the course of the evening, you had a conversation with Ms. Reed, is that correct?
We talked for quite a while.
And during that time that you were talking for quite a while, as far as, was that strictly sort of the two of you, or was Ms. McCabe involved in those conversations as well?
Ms. McCabe was involved with those conversations.
So just to,
It was the three of
the
us.
three of you are talking about it. Okay. And with respect, to the defendant's relationship with Mr. O'Keefe, what, if anything, did she say about that?
So she started by saying how much she admired him, how much he did for the children, just how she looked up to him for that. She started with that. Well, she started talking about my kids first, and then she started talking about John.
So she spoke about your kids?
About my daughter, yeah.
A little bit of a glowing fashion, is that correct?
She did. She always had a way of like saying, I don't know, she seemed to love my younger daughter, and she said that she really liked my daughter's relationship with John's niece. So she first started with that conversation, and then she went on talking about John and his relationship.
And then after she talked a little bit about that, what, if anything else, did she talk about?
So she started talking about how much he sacrifices, how he's like unconditionally puts all his time and effort into the kids, how she admired him for that, and how she also wished that some of the family members would step up and help out a little bit more because he took all the burden on himself.
And what, if anything, else did she say about that in relation to sort of their relationship?
Just that she wished they had a little bit more time to, go out, go on dates, go on vacation. But she did mention that they had planned a trip or something like that, that she was excited about.
Now, about what time would you say it was that you left from the waterfall?
I think everything started wrapping up around midnight. Hello.
You and I have never met.
We have not.
We've never had a conversation.
Never.
We've certainly never interviewed.
Nope.
together.
Never.
So this is our first time speaking.
Yes.
I want to direct your attention to part of your testimony on direct examination when you're questioned by Mr. Lally. You indicated that before Ms. Reed and Mr. O'Keefe left the bar, Ms. Reed had been making some statements about Mr. O'Keefe.
Okay. Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
You indicated that she said that she admired him,
Yes.
that she looked up to Mr. O'Keefe.
Yes.
She always had a way of complimenting him,
Yes.
that he took so much responsibility on as it pertained to the children,
Yes.
and that she did wish that they had more time together.
Yes.
They planned a trip together,
Yes.
and she was excited about that.
Correct.
And she indicated that John was excited about that as well.
Yes.
Just before leaving the bar, you indicated that Jennifer McCabe said to Miss Reed, "You're coming with me," correct?
Yes.
She didn't say, "You and John come with me."
No. Correct.
That was directed just to Miss Reed.
Yes.
You're familiar with the town of Canton generally?
Yes.
You know that the distance between the Waterfall Bar and 34 Fairview would be maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes drive.
Probably.
So just after these statements were made, they went to 34 Fairview. 5 minutes later, 7 minutes later, they'd be sitting in front of 34 Fairview, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. All right, Ms. Cole, anything?
Just very briefly, Your Honor. So, Mrs. Colakethis, with reference to your relationship with John O'Keefe, as far as what you were relaying was what the defendant had said to you at the bar that night, correct?
Correct.
Fair to say you didn't have any conversation with Mr. O'Keefe in reference to relationship or trips or anything like that?
Not that night. No.
And as far as your relationship with Mr. O'Keefe is, do you have any sort of discussions at any point in time about sort of his relationship with Ms. Reed or anything going on in that relationship?
He didn't tell me personal things. No.
You didn't have that type of relationship, correct?
Correct.
And this time out on January 28th, that was the first time that you had been out socially with the defendant, Ms. Reed, correct?
Correct.
And so as far as what went on behind sort of closed doors at their home or anything like that, you didn't know anything about that?
I did not know.
Nothing further.
I have one question, Your Honor, if I may. But what you did observe between the two of them that night, to use your words, they were lovey-dovey.
They were.
All right, Ms. Cole, keep us. You are all
Thank
set.
you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, wow, they didn't match up at all. Let's see if the bartender confirms or supports the statement of case. Let's listen to that.
And that particular night, John appeared to be in a good mood. Would you agree?
Yes.
In fact, John is a pretty good tipper.
I wouldn't really know.
But with regard to that particular night, there was one receipt that was introduced in Exhibit 54. You probably didn't take a close look at it.
No.
But if I suggested to you that there was a receipt for a total of $16.58 worth of drinks, and John put a tip down of $10, that'd be a pretty good tip, right? And do you need to see the receipt to confirm that, or?
No.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And that night, John's demeanor seemed fine. Would you agree?
Yes.
You didn't notice John buying drinks for a woman that night, did you?
No.
And with regard to your, sort of scanning the people that were there within that group, one of your duties as a bartender is to make sure that nobody's overserved, right?
Correct.
And so, while you don't watch every movement all the time, you do look for signs that somebody might be overserved, correct?
Correct.
And with regard to the group that came in, the receipts for which you were shown today, nobody really seemed highly intoxicated to you, correct?
No.
Let me just have a moment.
Yes.
I have no further questions. Thank you, ma'am.
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Treyas, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow. I'm starting to wonder if there's some ethical violations here. Why is this so important? Because the lead investigator is relying on the last drink Karen Reid had was at the second bar to work out the level of alcohol BAC factor at the time of the alleged incident. The statement of case is framed in such a way that the facts are just not matching up. So check out this video that I did regarding the flawed assumption of when Karen Reid had her last drink. It is also important to note the citation as to where the factual record came from. It came from State Trooper Buchanan, as he interviewed Karina and her husband. We'll probably cover her husband's testimony in another video. Can you see the framing theory in the statement of case? There was no supporting evidence that Karen Reid was intoxicated. By framing the statement of case in that way, this allowed for the DUI charges. But before we compare the next witness's testimony to the statement of case, I want to let you know for a plan to work, you need 4 actionable steps. You need to be strategic, tactical, operational, and have a contingency plan. So on the screen, the Commonwealth statement of case writes that Jennifer McCabe received a text message from Karen Reid's boyfriend, Officer John O'Keefe, when they were leaving the bar to go over to Brian Albert's after hours house for the party. And let me just insert this little bit of information. Where John O'Keefe was later found on the front lawn and died from injuries he sustained, including hypothermia. The manner of death was undetermined by the medical examiner, i.e., it was not determined that it was a homicide. Okay, so I'm just reading from this statement of case. Let's get back to that. John O'Keefe, the victim, texted Jen McCabe at 12:14 a.m. Where to? Remember, this is all supposed to be factual evidence. She replied with the address 34 Fairview Road. At 12:18, John O'Keefe texted Jen McCabe to obtain more specific directions to the house party. At 12:31, Jen sees Karen Reid's 2021 black Lexus SUV arrive in front of the residence. From her vantage point at the front door of the home, she texted John O'Keefe, "Hello." So this was, remember, at 12:31 a.m. At 12:40, Jen texts John O'Keefe again, "Pull up behind me." Now, I find this really important, and we'll find out why in a minute. Okay, so that was at 12:40 a.m. Jen says, after texting, "Pull up behind me," she observed Karen Reid's SUV move from its initial place where it had stopped on the street near the driveway and proceeded to the left side of the property, where John O'Keefe's body was subsequently discovered later in the early morning hours. The next timestamp on the statement of case is at 12:45. Jen McCabe texted John O'Keefe saying, "Hello." But listen to this. Jen McCabe observed Karen Reid's black SUV drive away from the home at 12:45 a.m. So she is not saying the next time she looked out, she noticed the SUV gone. No. The prosecutor's statement of case says Jen McCabe texted hello at 12:45 a.m. and then observed the black SUV drive away. So there is no doubt it was after she texted and she said she observed it driving away. So hello, which was at 12:45 a.m. Why am I making such a big deal about this? Let's watch and see if you catch it. Put a 1 in the chat if you catch it.
And you've also testified that as soon as you saw Ms. Reed's SUV, you texted John. Is that right?
Correct.
Here, exclamation point, question mark. That was the first text, right?
Correct.
But your text to John was at 12:27. You recall that?
Yes.
That's 4 minutes after you know Ryan Nagel arrived at the scene, correct?
Correct.
Since Karen Reed arrived before Ryan Nagel, she and John had to have been there 4 to 5 minutes before you ever saw her SUV, right?
Objection.
Is that right?
Ryan Nagel texted his sister at 12:23 here. And then he texted again that he was going to leave. Then Julie Nagel went outside
Mr.
and
McCabe, that's not my question.
I'm explaining what happened in the 4 minutes.
You can explain at another question. My question is very specific. Given the fact that Karen Reed, by definition, arrived at the location before Ryan Nagel, and Ryan Nagel arrived at 12:23, that means, and you didn't notice the SUV until 12:27, that means her car was there for at least 4 minutes before you ever noticed her, correct?
Objection.
Is that correct? Can you answer that question?
Correct.
You started paying somewhat close attention to it, did you not?
I went to the front door and looked out the window at the vehicle, yes.
As a matter of fact, you texted as soon as you saw the vehicle, that 12:27 here, correct?
Correct.
And then a few minutes later, at 12:31, you texted, pull behind me to John. Is that right?
Correct.
And then at 12:40, you texted hello, correct?
Correct.
And at 12:42, you texted, where are you?
Correct.
And at 12:45, you texted hello, correct?
Correct.
So that's 5 text messages, and each time you texted him, you were walking to the door and looking out at the vehicle as you're texting, correct?
I know for the first 2 I was.
You testified at another hearing, another proceeding, on June 8th, 2023, correct?
Correct.
In that other proceeding, did you testify that you got up and sat down and got up and sat down every time you were texting?
Possibly.
Okay. So if you got up and walked over to the door and you see the SUV and you text, and then you walk away from the door and sit down for a second, that would be one text and one view of the SUV, correct?
Yes.
So if you did that at 12:27, 12:31, 12:40, 12:42, and 12:45, you'd agree that's 5 times that you were up and down looking at the SUV, correct?
I'm not sure if I did it 5 times.
How many times do you think you did do it?
I know I definitely did it the first when I said here. I know I definitely did it when I said pull behind me because that's when the vehicle had moved up a little bit.
And then did you see the vehicle move up again? A second time?
Yes, that's when I told him to pull behind me.
Okay, so that's the first time. So just so we're clear, when you first saw the SUV, it was stationary, correct?
When I first saw the vehicle, it was straight ahead out the front door stationary.
And you texted here.
Correct.
Then you walked back over to the window, or I'm sorry, to the door, to the storm door, and you said, pull behind me, correct, at 12:31.
Correct.
All right, at that point, you saw that it had moved up a little bit, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so if you saw it move up a second time, which you just said you did, then that would be a third time that you had to have seen it and texted, correct?
Why would that be third time?
Because it only moved once so far, you saw it move twice.
So the first time I saw it, it was here, and I said here, and then the next time I texted, I said pull behind me. So that was 1 time, 2 times.
Keep going. You said you saw it pull up again, a second time. You said you saw it move twice.
From one place to the flagpole to further up.
Right, so that's 3 times that you're up to the door.
Okay.
Is that yes?
I'm telling you, my memory is twice to the door.
Mr. McCabe, it's not a trick question. You just testified that you saw the car move twice. By definition, that has to be you looked at it 3 times. Stationary, move once, move twice.
Maybe I used the wrong wording.
Maybe. Let me have just a moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
And as a matter of fact, you looked every single time that you texted, you indicated that you looked out at the SUV and saw something that prompted you to text something, correct?
Correct.
And then after the last time, which would be 5 times, 5 texts, 5 looks, after the last time you texted, you got back up, which would be a 6th time, and the SUV was gone. Just chronologically.
Correct. My husband and I were both getting up and looking, so
I didn't ask you about your husband.
Okay.
Just about you. The answer's correct.
yes.
Okay. Then you noticed that the SUV was gone after the 12:45 text, right?
Correct.
So you're looking at that SUV over the course of between the beginning text and the end text. It's about 19 minutes, right? 12:27 or so to 12:45, 18, 19 minutes, something like that, correct?
Correct.
You maybe add a minute because you got back up and didn't text, and the SUV was gone, right?
Correct.
So you would agree, we just do some basic math, you're looking at that SUV on average about every 3.5 minutes.
I guess I'm. If you want to pull out the times, then you can look at them.
Well, we talked about the times, and you agreed that you were texting between 12:27 and 12:45,
Correct.
right? So if you were just to divide that by 5 times, get nothing's looking, I don't know, I do the math in my head, maybe it's every 3 minutes or so.
Correct.
At no time did you hear any noise or sound outside that was unusual? Caught your
No.
attention? You didn't hear any squealing of tires or squealing of brakes?
No.
You didn't hear any screaming or yelling?
No.
You didn't hear any loud voices or foul language or door slam?
No.
You didn't hear any verbal argument or the revving of an engine, anything like that?
No.
As a matter of fact, you didn't hear any collision or crash, did you?
No.
As a matter of fact, the entire time that you looked out at that vehicle with that clear and that good view, you didn't see anything out of the ordinary, did you?
No.
And you would agree with me, as you looked at the SUV, you're looking over the lawn to the SUV out at the street, correct?
Correct.
There was no obstruction between you and the SUV. You've already testified to that, is that right?
Correct.
And you could see everything in your field of view.
Correct.
And then you saw the SUV gone. It had driven away after 12:45.
Correct.
So I have a question, Ms. McCabe. Where was the body?
I have no idea. I'm assuming the body was on the front lawn.
The problem with that is you were looking at the front lawn, weren't you?
I was looking at the vehicle and where it had moved.
You know what field of view is?
Would you like to explain it?
You had a clear and good view across that lawn to the SUV, didn't you?
When it was straight out, I did, yes.
You had a clear and good view of that SUV the entire time until it left, didn't you?
I could see the black SUV, correct.
Nothing was obstructing your vision.
I wasn't looking at the ground.
I didn't ask you about the ground yet. We'll get to the ground. Nothing was obstructing your vision, was it?
No.
So you had a clear and good, your words, not mine, a clear and good view of the SUV
Yes.
and everything in front of it.
I never said everything in front of it. I saw the SUV. It's black. It has lights on. And as it moved, I could see it with its lights.
You had a clear view of everything between you and the SUV. All the things closer to you and the SUV.
I wouldn't say that.
So your view was obstructed on what was between you and the SUV, but not obstructed on the SUV?
That's not what I was saying.
No, of course not. Because if you had a clear field of view to the SUV, you could see everything in front of it as well, meaning between you and the SUV as well.
If I'm looking straight out at an SUV, I'm not looking down at the ground.
Let me ask you a question about that. Focusing right now on my face
Yes.
as you're answering these questions. You think you'd see, I don't know, an alligator sitting in front of me if it was there?
Objection, Your Honor.
You think you would see something? Can you clearly see that there is nothing between you and me except a podium?
Yes. Well, there's a table.
And you don't have to look down to see that, right?
Correct.
You're looking directly in my face, but you can see things that are between you and me because you have a field of vision, right?
Objection.
So I'm going to see counsel at sidebar for just a minute.
Ms. McCabe, as you looked over that flat lawn with that good and clear view of the SUV, you could see the SUV and everything between you and the SUV, correct?
When I looked out the front window, I could see the SUV clearly, like I'm looking at you right now, and it was further away than you are.
And you did it not once, not twice, not 3 times. You did it 5 times, and then a 6th after it was gone, correct?
Correct.
And after that SUV was gone, and you looked out that window with that clear and good view, There was no body, was there?
I never saw a body.
Thank you.
I wish I had.
Sounds like that's a little rehearsed.
Not at all. It's not at all.
Objection.
I'll let the answer stand.
What, if anything, were you able to observe or ascertain that the defendant's phone did at approximately 12:36 a.m.?
So by looking at the timeline in the phone, we're able to see that Miss Reed's phone auto-connected to John O'Keefe's Wi-Fi at his house at 12:36 a.m. We know this because it's a password-protected access to the phone, so you would have to know the password to get into this Wi-Fi network.
And that would be the home at 1 Meadows Avenue, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So, did you catch it? The times are not matching up. The factual evidence confirmed Karen Reed connected to John O'Keefe's home Wi-Fi at 12:36 a.m. Karen Reed was not outside the house party, so why was Jen McCabe texting at 12:40 a.m. pull up behind me when Karen Reed had already left? Was Jen McCabe setting up Karen Reed texting pull up behind me when she wasn't even there? And how could she say she observed Karen Reed's SUV leaving at 12:45 a.m. when Karen Reed was already at John O'Keefe's property, logged on to his Wi-Fi at 12:36? If we calculate a more realistic time for Karen to drive back to the house, let's say 8 minutes, because of visibility due to the blizzard conditions, that 2 minutes to park and let's say get into the property. So we'll say 10 minutes. And this would align more with John's phone as it stopped recording at 12:41. So in my opinion, Jen McCabe thought of the setup at 12:31. That would give enough time from when Karen Reed dropped him off for something to have happened inside the house for Jen McCabe to start the frame up. Does that make sense? Why would Jen McCabe want to frame Karen Reed or make it look like John hadn't arrived? Well, her brother-in-law is Brian Albert, who owns the house. So there could be some family loyalties to her sister and her brother-in-law. Go over and check out Aussie Insider, as she has done a great analysis on Karen Reed's SUV, the taillight photo that was presented in court. It could have very well been doctored. I'll let you decide. Go check her out. Let me know your thoughts. By leaving a comment, you may help someone else that will read your comment. And of course, I love to read all comments as they are valued, and together we can be more informed. And this information may help you or someone you know. In the meantime, on this channel, you'll find a variety of playlists to suit every curiosity about the justice system. And we provide you with a visual to information and the process. So please like this video if you like this kind of content. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you want to be notified when I'm going live or upload another video. I'm Karen Cole from Legal Minded Friends. Information is power, meaning if you know something, you can make decisions that are right for you.